All right, today what I have in store for you is a comparison of the 2002 R1150RT and the 2009 R1200RT. That's where we're going to start, and after we do that review, we're going to go into a 100-mile review on the R1150RT, and that is 100 miles of twisties and then some highway miles after that, just to kind of get a full idea what this bike is capable of next week. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you get reminders, because next week we'll have a full-on review or ride of that R1200RT, and that's going up Highway 70 in California, up the Feather River Canyon, and then down Highway 49, and that goes past Downeyville and out past Grass Valley. And that is a fantastic ride and review. You don't want to miss it, so hit that bell icon so you get reminded and subscribe. Thank you so much. Let's get on with it. All right, guys, today we have the comparison of the BMW R1150RT and the R1200RT. Let's take a look at these really quick just to kind of get an idea of some of the differences. So let's start with at the front here. The windscreen's totally different idea and different concept with the windscreens, both electronic. This one is more of a full windscreen from top down to midship on the bike, where this one is just really concentrated up on the top of the bike, concentrated with a fairing covering the rest of it. Headlights, of course, are a little bit different. The mirrors, same concept, to have the lower mirrors that you look underneath the bars. All right, guys, I had to pause the video here because the view from each one of these mirrors is totally different. Even though they look very much identical, they're really not. So on this bike, this is the 1150, and you can see I look over my hand, and if you look in the reflection of the mirror, I look under the bar and straight back. It's a really natural look. When you get to the 1200, you're going to see I look over the bar, but it kind of is blocked by the bar, and the mirror, when you look at it, my hand is directly nearly in the center of the mirror. So you have sort of an obscured view, and you end up leaning your head over a little bit and moving around on the 1200 RT than you do on the 1150. All right, back to the program. Air intake, they are doing the similar things with the air intake here that is for the oil cooler on both bikes. So these are oil cooled motorcycles, and motors are very identical, a little bit larger on the 1200, of course, yet one thing that might not be as apparent is in the internals, it's a little bit higher revving motor. The torque has gone up a little bit from the 1150, but also the RPM where that peak torque is met is higher on the 1200, where it is a little bit lower on the 1150. So you should see a little bit better torque performance on the 1150 than over the 1200, just from where you're riding, unless you're really on it. Although that statement is true, I'm pausing here really quick, what you find in practice is that the 1200 feels like it has a bit more torque, just because it's a bit smoother of a motor, and it pulls a little bit smoother off of that lower RPM. Let's take a look at the luggage systems. Integrated luggage system. No top case on either one of them for today. I do have a top case for this one. This one has more of a rack for, say, like a duffel bag, something like that. This looks like a luggage, like a Samsonite luggage package attached to a bike. It's very integrated with the motorcycle, really nicely fit units. The other BMW pannier system is more starting to head towards, it's painted, it's supposed to be a bit nicer, but not quite as integrated. It's very, very similar, but pretty close. Both really relatively about the same size. I'm sure there's some specs on that. Take a look at the wheels and exhaust system and all of that. It looks like a little bit wider wheel here, and a lot larger exhaust pipe on this one. Same anyway. So let's take a look at sort of the ergonomics from the back. You look at the size. If we look down here at between the tank where your legs go, just looks in a sense enormous compared to this one, where it is large. It seems larger at the bottom towards the heads of the motorcycle. Let's see if I look down here. towards the heads, the fairing is larger to somewhat protect you from that, whereas they have just a bit of a shield here on this one to protect you from that. They both have the ability for integrated speakers. This one does not have integrated speakers. This one does. Heated grips on both. Cruise control on the 2009. All right, here we are out out on Mines Road. If you go straight, we go up to the, what I always call the lake, little overlook, and if you kept going, you go to the lake. That's why I call it the lake. If you turn left here, we're going to continue on Mines Road out to Mount Hamilton. If you want to see a review of that road broken out by section, I've got a video that is called 100 Miles of Twisties, and you can check that one out. I'll put a link somewhere. Alright guys, let's get up into some of these twisties here. See how the bike does. I love this first section, really test out the bike and the suspension and how it works, because this is one of the first part of this road is really rough. It'll be a good test between the two bikes. And I can feel the bumps, but there's nothing jarring about them. I mean, you just feel them. Seems pretty smooth. Into our first corner. Now it's a bunch of bumps in that corner. Let's see how it does pulling off of like 2,000 RPM. Good torque. That's actually right around 3,000 RPM feels about right. I want to get in a lower. Let's see how the low RPM does here. Let's get down to, say, there's 2,000 RPM, and I pull from 2. It pulls. Still got enough torque to pull from there. Feels appropriate at 3. All right, well, let's have some fun in these twisties. See how the bike reacts. Now we are at I think we're at 11 miles of riding so far. This is sort of mile 4 on this road, but I'll catch back up with you guys in a little while. All right, guys, we're at mile 10. There's the 10. And to give you a quick recap of where we've come and how things have gone. So pretty much had left the suspension as it sort of as normal super soft suspension. This one's manual adjust just in the rear only, and I will tell you that I did hit the kickstand down here. That center stand comes down, it's pretty low right at that point, and you can see right where I hit it in a corner right here. That was a pretty solid hit. Here, and so I'm gonna stiffen up that rear suspension a little bit just for this road, because it is a bit windy and a bit rough. So we're going to go ahead and run that on down a little bit. It's really soft, and that'll bring that back end up just a tiny bit. May help me from bottoming out quite so much on the suspension, and maybe not hit that center stand. That would be nice. Let's see if we got that on there. Always test this little thing. You wouldn't want that falling off. All right, and we'll continue on. Well, I just figured I'd have to point this out. Sometimes people nail their boots to a post. I don't know why that is. That's odd. All right, guys, we made a little bit of adjustment to the suspension. It's been another 5 or 10 miles, and I can tell you that suspension adjustment did amazing things to this motorcycle. It transforms. There's a transformer motorcycle, but the suspension has quite a bit of adjustment. So now it's very stable in the corners. I'm not bottoming out. I'm not hitting any metal pieces. With it really soft, it was a lot lower and really soft. It almost felt like it didn't really wallow, but it certainly. Yeah, almost wallowed. Okay, I'll put it that way. But now, nice and firm, and takes the corners a lot better. It turns in better, so that rear end's just a little bit higher, and so I have more ground clearance to corner with. And it's another interesting thing is on this motorcycle, I prefer to have the windscreen down all the way when I'm on these twisties. It just feels better. It feels more natural. We'll go through some of these corners here. It handles these corners just much better now. Just to have that much range in the suspension, it really is dramatic. It really feels firm front to rear. And with a telelever front suspension on these bikes, this and the GS, both changing front or rear settings on your suspension will affect both. And now this one only has adjustments on the rear suspension, but it does affect the front as well. Just the way that the transition of the suspension works. It's kind of an interesting setup. But it certainly makes for a really great bike to ride in the twisties. Bumps don't transition into the front like they were before. Really nice. Real nice handling characteristics. You know, since we're talking about these bikes and how they handle, and I find this very light and nimble in the handling department, and it's mainly due to your counter steering. 100% it seems like counter steering is your friend, and it's just natural that you do it. But I just kind of realized that, and as I go into these corners, as I come up on another corner, I'm really, you know, so you push it down into the corner. So you push and it comes down into it. You're sort of pushing, you know, it's all counter steering. A lot more so, and you know, noticing it anyway, that and that makes the steering nice and light. Oh, there's a deer. Where there's one, there's more. So it just feels, I thought that was worth mentioning, that it's a good thing that the bike responds really well to counter steering. Mentioning about its pull through the gears, and it seems like its sweet spot, let's see, we go down here at about 2,500 RPM is a nice sweet spot on this motorcycle. Pulling from 2,500, it's just so natural. From 2,500 to about 3,500, just this natural torquey pull. That's a pretty good sized pine cone there. Actually, the reason I stopped here is look at this cattle guard. So you're crossing these cattle guards, and if you can imagine going across one of these, that's like a good 8 inches across on each one of these. If you were to stop, your leg would fall through there, you'd probably break it. But also imagine, so your normal roadway, you got grip all the way across. You've got no grip for every 8 to 10 inches of gaps. This is why you don't turn on a cattle guard or a cattle crossing. It could be very dangerous. When you're coming up on them really fast, it looks like they're really close together, but really they're not. That is just massively dangerous. I don't even like looking at that. Oh my gosh. But if you've never taken a close look at one of those, good idea to have a look-see and never stop on one. Very sharp corners here. These hairpins are pretty awesome little hairpins. We got them all the way up to the top of Mount Hamilton. Comes another one. Lots of fun. comes another. I think that this cattle guard right here is in a really bad spot because it is in a corner. Remember looking at that last cattle guard? You don't really want to be caught turning on the cattle guards, so try to take those straight. That gate was open. Hey. It's a nice car. Hello. Look at that. The other thing I would say is, so these bikes all seem to handle really well. But I think you can take the newer ones just a bit further into sport bike or territory than you can the older ones. You're going to find the limit on this bike sooner than you're going to find it on the newer ones. For instance, when we first started this ride, I had this in the soft setting, and I immediately touched down with the center stand. There's a piece that kind of hangs down a little bit, and that immediately touched the ground, and it's very noticeable. So I beefed up the suspension a bit, and I really just hadn't noticed touching. I mean, nothing ever got close to touching from my, it didn't seem like it. And I thought, well, let's push it a bit further. So we started pushing it into sport bike territory where I'm coming off, leaning off the side of the bike. I am down to where my feet, I've got my toes on the pegs, and my toes are just dragging around each corner. And as that happened, when I hit a bump, I heard the scrape of that center stand again. And so that's really pushing it harder than you should on this bike, I'll put it that way. But I really wanted to go test the limit there, and you can get to it. It handled it just fine. But on the newer bikes, 2009 and 2015, you don't necessarily hit that limit unless you have lowered pegs. The center stand seems to be out of the way. I can go down and drag my pegs on those bikes, and that sort of seems to be the first point of contact. And at that point, I mean, you're into sport bike territory at that point. When you test them back to back, you can tell the difference. But if you're not testing it back to back, I don't think you're going to be able to tell the difference that much. I mean, you're going to be like, okay, they feel a little bit different. Let's see if the I don't think it's open. No, that would be closed. Anyways, we're definitely at the halfway point here, guys, and what are we at, 53 miles? And it is a beautiful day on this side of the mountain. Well, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more of the views from this side, which is pretty nice. I mean, you got better views on this side of the mountain. And we're going to head down into San Jose, and then we'll take the freeway home and see how that goes. Look at this new asphalt here. It's beautiful. Looks like they're redoing the road. This side's always been better than the other side of Mount Hamilton. Just beautiful, smooth tarmac. That has got to make your day. That sure makes for a nice ride. Can't tell if that's sand. Yeah, a little bit of sand in the corner. I'm kind of trying to avoid that a little bit. Still some, they always have dirt on the side of the roads here. A little sand, brand new road, and they still have sand on it. But gosh, so smooth. Makes for a nice ride. Look at this nice corner here. It's so tight. And it's like all off camera. I love that. There we probably can't tell, but that's like about a 15-foot drop down on that corner. It just kind of goes down really sharp, really neat. Most of these are just nice, smooth corners. So here's another interesting thing about the bikes that are say 2008, 2007, I think, and older. They've got this linked braking system, and you literally can rely on it just by, like, watch, I'm just going to use the rear brake, no front brake, just use the rear pedal, which feels weird to do, but it modulates the brakes for you. Same thing if I use just the front brake, it'll modulate that rear brake for me. Here we go. Same thing. You can, I know on my GS I could confuse the system by letting go of one brake or the other like that. See if that works. Nope, didn't confuse it. So that's pretty good. So that what I was doing to try and confuse it, come in pretty hot, and then I would grab the front brake and then just let go of one of the brakes, either the front or the rear. Or just apply one of the brakes really late, something you probably wouldn't normally do. But on my GS I could confuse the system and it would start pulsating the brakes. It would just really act weird. This one, it seems to just act fine, which is good, obviously very good. I like to modulate the brakes myself, but probably because I've been riding a lot longer and I'm just used to doing that. But if you're not used to modulating your brakes, this one's going to do a fantastic job for you. Front to rear, here we go. Now I get off the back brake. That didn't even, no problem. Kept it perfect. It still kept the back brake on. You know, it's still following up with that rear brake, which is pretty awesome. It's like you got a buddy helping you out with the brakes. Well, it's one of these roads I'd recommend. Highly recommend if you're in California, anywhere near Livermore, San Jose, go on up to Mount Hamilton and back down the other side. It's a gorgeous ride. A loop up to Mount Hamilton and back from the Livermore side is 100 miles. I don't know what it is from this side. Never really measured that one out. We're going to do a full loop going from Livermore up to Mount Hamilton and back down the other side to San Jose and then back to Livermore along the freeway. There is another route that takes some twisty roads as well, but we're going to skip that one today because we just don't have as much time. Let's see if Alright guys, we're going to hop on the freeway in the last bit of this thing. Let's see, we're at 74 miles now. Been on the bike for about 2 hours. Yeah, we'll head on the freeway. I think I'll move that windscreen up. Get myself out of the wind a little bit. There we go. So I think these mirrors work pretty great in traffic. Kind of look down. You can see a broad band of traffic completely behind me. Probably could move that mirror out just a tiny bit just to get the stuff right beside me, but I can certainly see most of the traffic with a little bit of a head nod there. Let's bring this up to cruising speed. Okay, way over cruising speed, but so yeah, nice and smooth. They got great protection from this windscreen. In the full up position, I can actually feel the wind behind me kind of pushing me. Bring it down a little bit and then it sort of moves me back. So you can kind of control how it feels and how it holds you on the bike. If I go down even further, then I start pushing back a little bit so I don't have to hold on to the handlebars. That's quite awesome. So a good amount of... Hey guys, thanks for hanging out this long. This is a fantastic bike at a fantastic price point, somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 depending on mileage and condition. Next thing I like to say is that you can get more refinement the newer you get. So like let's say in 2009 you get cruise control. 2021 you're going to get adaptive cruise control, and you get refinements along the line up to there. So you just sort of pick the bike that's right for you. And of course your budget, because budget's always a concern. I'd rather be out riding than making payments on a motorcycle. So when you can have this good of a bike and just pay, hopefully pay cash for it, then that's awesome. I've been sitting in the saddle for a little over 2 hours, and seat's comfortable. It's pretty darn good. All right, once again, hey, thanks for checking in, and we will see you next week. We're going to be on the 2009 R1200RT. It should be a lot of fun. See you then.